You're welcome to Candid Conversation this beautiful Tuesday morning, and joining us is a veteran broadcaster, Mrs. Bimbo Oloyede. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ife. Nice for you to come.
Nice to see you. Now, on Candid Conversations, we're going to talk about broadcasting, what it was yesterday, what it is today, what it's likely to be tomorrow. So you'll be sharing some of your experiences with us, what it was for you on the job, the things that molded you in the course of the job, and what it's been. I think there was a break. You had to leave for some time, then came back later. We're going to talk about all of that. But let's start out with you, and the last time, you just said to me now that you can't remember the last time that the lights came on you. Let's talk about that and start from there.
Well, yes, it's been some time really that the lights have hit me like this, because I think it was December 2015. That was really when I stopped anchoring the news on Channels TV. But I recall, I think it was in 2018, May or June, NTA was celebrating 40 years of its existence. Yes. And they spent a few months inviting some of us who had been with the NTA, many years ago. And I was invited to anchor the news for 1 week, which I did. So I think maybe that's about the last time that I was really subjected to a studio situation. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to do that. When we put out the notice that we're going to have you on Candid Conversation, somebody wrote and sent it that message. You say, where has she been? We've not seen her on channels for a long time. Now you have answered that. But take us through the very first time you came on TV, or that you came in as a broadcaster. Can you remember the year and the very first responsibility you had?
I do remember. I was actually employed on the not that I was employed. I began work on the 1st of September in 1975. Then the organization was called NBC TV, and I was employed as an assistant producer, and I was sent to the drama department, and I worked there for about a year before I was deployed to presentation, and from presentation to news.
So what was the very first thing you did as you came behind the microphone?
Behind the microphone, the first thing that I did was a program called Elegy. That program came about as a result of the death of the then head of state, Murtala Mohammed. At the time, radio had a program eulogizing the characteristics of Murtala Mohammed, and TV did not. And there was a challenge thrown to the drama department. You people, you are the ones that have all the artists. Something must come on TV. We must have our own program. But unfortunately, there was a curfew. And so our regular artists were not able to come to the station. So we told our bosses at the time that our artists can't come. And they said, but aren't you people artists? Go ahead and do something. So we had to come up with this program. We called it Elegy, and I think I was reading poetry and things like that. That was the first time that I appeared on TV in Nigeria. Well, actually, that was not the first time. The first time, I think I was about 10 years old. I took part in a program, some kind of spelling competition or something like that, a children's program. But I mean, professionally, yeah. Elegy was in 1976, and it was actually from Elegy that I was, I don't know the word I will use, commanded to get ready. You're going on air, and we're going nationwide, so are you, and you're going to read the news.
So how did it turn out? Tell us about it.
Well, it was interesting. It was different. I mean, I'd never done anything like that before. We had a rehearsal. It was the late Ikenna Ndaguba and myself. We were the first pair to anchor the network news, as it was called and is still called. So I was told to bring something African to wear. I was told that at about 7 or 7:30 we were going to have a rehearsal. We were going to go through the news reports, and I was told that I would not read any of the live stories, that I would handle some of the reports, not all of them. And we had to practice, because I had to know when my cues, were given to me, at what point to come in, at what point to stop speaking, etc., etc. So that was the first experience. And, well, it was interesting. I suppose it was exciting, and it was certainly different.
So tell us about the kind of preparation you had to go through over the years before you came on properly as a news reader or newscaster.
Well, I think my situation was probably quite different from most people's, because as a child and growing up as a teenager, I was interested in speech and drama. So I actually had elocutions. I took elocution lessons, rather, from about, I don't know, perhaps I started at about the age of 10. And I continued with these elocution lessons until I left school. So the kind of training, perhaps, at least the elocution training that I would have had under normal circumstances in Nigeria, I did not have, because I had already gone through it over a period of years. Maybe that is what was observed when I took part in this program, Elegy. I didn't know that at the time the NBC was planning a network transmission. I didn't know at the time that they wanted to bring in females as news anchors. And I didn't know that they were looking for fresh faces and fresh voices. And so I guess that's how I was somehow seconded, if you like, to being a news anchor. Now, I know that most of my contemporaries went through quite a lot of training, because you weren't allowed to come on air if you had not been through that training. You had to have elocution lessons. You had to have presentation lessons. You had to understudy other people. My situation was different, as I said, because I spent most of my growing years abroad, and elocution lessons was something that I had done for years. So
it was natural for you, and you came on the job. You actually had some of the things they wanted.
Well, I suppose so. I suppose so. I mean, I honestly don't know what they were looking for at the time, but I presume the first thing they needed was a voice that was clear and a voice that could be understood. And, well, I suppose they found that my voice was clear and they could understand what I was saying.
So how long did you spend reading the news on the NTA?
Oh, it was a short time, actually. I think I was a news anchor for about 4 years. And then I resigned from the NTA.
To do what?
Oh, a variety of things. A variety of things. But somehow, most of what I did, I think, they were linked in many ways to broadcasting. Because quite a lot of the time, I was contracted to be an MC at various functions, compere, moderator, that kind of thing. And then my husband and I actually established a production company, a TV production company. And we produced commercials, TV commercials, radio commercials. Well, he ran the company, but I suppose I was somewhere in the in the background. I also ventured into trade because I ran a supermarket. I did that for some years whilst my children were growing. And then I became involved in development work as well. I founded an NGO. And I also got involved in training, which I found very, very interesting. You know, training people in speech, presentation, public speaking, that sort of thing, before I came back as a news anchor on a different station.
All right, let's go into this issue of training. You said you train people and all of that. What's the experience been like for you, training people to speak right, to mouth their words correctly? And what would you say is the idea that people bring into the training when they come with them?
Most people don't actually understand discipline that is involved in learning to speak well. They have this idea that once they understand the sound of English, that it means that they will be able to sustain it. So they don't realize that it takes practice and continued practice. It's not something that you actually stop. In the first instance, you know, the language is dynamic and it keeps on changing. So even if you've been in the business for 30, 40, 50, whatever number of years, you are still always going to come across new words. You're always going to come across new pronunciations, because even pronunciation also changes. So I think the main surprise to most people is the fact that you do have to keep on practicing. And it is not something, you see, you can be taught, but the sound has to become part of you. And the only way that sound can become part of you is if you keep on hearing it. And the only way you can keep on hearing it is if you keep on saying it. So there is no shortcut. It's continued and sustained practice.
What do you think when you listen to radio today and watch TV? What comes to mind?
Well, it's a little bit, it's haphazard, actually. The kind of structure and form that one expects is not really, it's missing. There's a lot of, how would I put it, a happy-go-lucky kind of approach to presentation and to content, which I think is, it misses the mark. You see, if you want to give the impression that your program is breezy, is free and easy, it's flowing, it takes much more effort to arrive at that conclusion. It's like somebody who is preparing to act a role, okay? And the role is for somebody to be relaxed, to be free. You have to learn how to be free. You have to learn how to appear as if you're relaxed. And that takes time. Now, you can be relaxed to the point where you lose focus. You can be relaxed to the point where you stop pronouncing the words properly. You can be relaxed to the point where the discipline and the responsibility that goes with presentation flies down. And that's because you really haven't taken the time to prepare. There is a process. It is not ad hoc. It is not, oh, let me jump into the studio and, oh, what am I going to talk about today? No. Everything is supposed to be properly planned so that when you do come on air, depending on the kind of character that you choose to portray, for the kind of program that you are presenting, everything falls in place. Yeah.
Let me take you back to your time in the NTA. Who were the people you met on the job? And how would you describe the working relationship that you had with them?
Well, I met Julie Coker. Julie Coker was our head of presentation. Of course, I met Ike Nandaguba because we read the news together. I met Mike Inahuro, who was also a news anchor. They were both actually working for radio, but they came to TV to anchor the news. The other person that began that series was Bode Alalade. Unfortunately, all three of them are no more. So these were the three network news. Sienna Orwell Brown, Vera Ifudu, and myself. We were the three women that began. And not too long after us, Joan O'Dwyer, who had started on radio and had also been moved to TV, she joined us casting the news. Julie Coker also joined in. I'm trying to think of some other names now. At that particular period, Buki Ajayi, who is now late as well. I think we kind of got things going. I know that Ronke, well, she was Dali then. Ronke Ayuba was also with us at the time, and others joined in. Others joined in later.
So, what was the relationship with your bosses at that time? What kind of supervision did you have? How serious was it when we talk about the job?
We were monitored virtually morning, noon, and night. In those days, we had an announcement booth. Continuity. We had continuity announcers, or we were continuity announcers, and in that booth there were two telephones. One had a green light, and one had a red light. So if the red light began to flash, then you would know that you're in trouble. Somebody somewhere, is about to pounce on you. Yes, if it's a green light, usually it's just giving you information, perhaps something that you need to say, some information that you need to pass across to the public. But that red light, you knew that you were in for it. We were monitored literally, if I think about it now, morning, noon, and night. And we had a meeting once a week. I remember we used to meet most of the time at Broadcasting House. Occasionally, they came to TV House, but all our bosses. And this included the general managers, the directors of television, the director general himself.
They had the time to be about those.
Oh, they made the time. They concerned, if presenters were not presenting well, if we as the voices and the faces of the station were not giving a good account of ourselves, well, they would also be called to question. And they set certain standards which we were not allowed to lower. It just wasn't possible. So every week, we used to call them post-mortems, actually. Every week, they would play one person's program, a program that had already been broadcast. And everybody else would listen to it. And then our bosses would either tell you you've done a good job, or they would tell you you've done a lousy job. Whichever way, they would pick that piece to bits and tell you what you've done well and tell you what you still need to improve upon. So at any point in time, and you were never given any notice, so you never knew whose turn it was going to be. So it was in your interest to make sure that each time you appeared on air, you gave of your best.
You gave your best. Now, when you watch TV or listen to shows these days, do you think that these kind of meetings that you've talked about, do they happen?
Well, I really don't know what goes on in most radio and TV stations, but I would hazard a guess that these meetings do not happen. I think in a few places, because when you watch certain stations and you listen to certain stations, it is clear that the presenters are making more effort than in other stations. So I would say that, I don't know, if I was going to say, to give it a percentage, maybe 10% of stations actually have these kinds of meetings and these kinds of reviews. Because you see, apart from anything else, when you sit down and you have a meeting like this, it's also like a mini training session, okay? And I am not sure how many stations, I'm not even sure how many broadcasters actually have been through formal training or actually want to go through formal training. Or maybe I should even take it one step further and say actually believe that they need to go through formal training.
When you hear people with different accents on radio or TV, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think it's a pity. I think it's a pity because I believe that I met in this profession, they set a certain standard. And I think that those of us who came, I think we made an effort to maintain those standards. And I think also that it's because of those standards that perhaps some of the younger ones became interested in broadcasting. Now, I'm not sure if young people coming up now really have too many role models in the broadcast profession. So what bothers me is how are standards going to be maintained? How are they going to be established? If people are not properly trained, then it means that they really don't know what standards to establish. It means that they don't know the kind of responsibility. And it also means that they probably don't know the type of debt they owe, both to the public and to those who established the standards in the first place. And I think perhaps the worst part of it is that they don't really understand what they owe themselves. Because, you know, in this profession, we say that you are as good as your last performance, okay? So if your last performance was not good, where do you go from there?
So who's watching, who's monitoring this time around?
Well, perhaps some people in some stations monitor, because there are stations that have been established by professionals, by practitioners, okay? There are stations that have been established by people who were interested, but perhaps really didn't know all the ins and outs of the profession. So I would assume that those who are monitoring most will be those who were practitioners themselves and so understand that there is a standard that needs to be upheld.
It takes us to mispronunciation of names, places for practitioners in the business. How can people get to understand that this is actually a crime?
I like the word you use, that it's a crime.
Yes.
Well, it's a crime if you are a broadcaster and a presenter, and people are listening to you, watching you, hoping to learn from you, and you just go ahead and murder words without looking back. So, sure, it is a crime. What can be done about it? Perhaps the broadcasting organizations of Nigeria, or maybe the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, or maybe even the newly established Broadcasters Guild of Nigeria. Perhaps these are bodies that could take it upon themselves to monitor. Now, I don't know whether it would help if sometimes people are sanctioned. But the question really is, who is going to do the sanctioning? And I'm not sure whether it's really going to serve any specific purpose. Because a lot of people think that, well, English is not our language anyway, and so why should we bother to speak it properly? But then, if it is Nigeria's official language, and if it is the language that we use to communicate, then I don't see the point in calling yourself a professional if you're not going to make an effort to pronounce the words properly. So honestly, it's an open question. It's an open-ended question. I don't know who's going to take the responsibility, because I don't know who is going to believe that it is important enough for broadcasters to ensure that they pronounce words properly.
A while ago, you talked about a dearth in mentors in broadcasting. What happened to you, your generation, the ones before you, and the ones after you? What happened? Was it that they didn't mentor people who took over the baton from them?
Case, this digital age has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. Human beings, I suppose, when your name is known, when your face is easily recognizable, sometimes it could turn your head. Okay? Sometimes it could make you think that because you're recognized where you go, even though that recognition is usually not defined, it's general, okay? But then we sometimes have minds that we are known. Now, if I'm known, and if I'm somehow celebrated, then who is it really that has the authority to tell me or tell you that your program yesterday was not as good as it could have been or as good as it should have been? So I think there's a little bit of a problem in that many of our broadcasters don't really understand. I've used this word responsibility on several occasions, and I think that I'm going to use it again. I think it is irresponsible for a broadcaster to believe that because they are known or because they are recognized, that it's almost as if when I listen to people and I watch people, I get this feeling and this impression that some people think that they're doing the viewer or the listener a favor by presenting. I might be wrong, but that's the kind of feeling that I sometimes get. And unless we understand that actually what we're providing is a service, if we can come to that understanding, then perhaps we could be a little more humble. Let me use that word, because I think that it's a privilege to appear in people's homes. It's a privilege to switch on their radio, or switch on their device, turn on their device, and you hear voices. I need to come to that kind of understanding and in fact, the viewer or the listener is doing us the favor. It's the other way around.
Sticking with you, wanting to watch your program,
yes,
or listen to you on radio.
Yes, yes.
They're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
All right, you just talked about the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, the NBC, and the Broadcasters Guild that has just been set up to take it upon themselves to monitor. After all these decades, why are we just thinking about these bodies to monitor what it is that practitioners are doing?
Well, somebody's got to. And you see, you asked a question about what have we been doing, why haven't we been mentoring? I think we have in our own, ways. We may not have been doing it collectively, but individually, I believe we have been mentoring. Some stations have approached us in training. Have to, but it's not too many stations that are actually willing to train their staff.
Why do you think they're never willing to train their staff?
Well, first of all, it's not cheap. Secondly, I think there's this general feeling that once we train you and you're now, much better, you will use our training and move on to somewhere else. And the training we give you will be your bargaining power. So I think then the broadcasters themselves should take it upon themselves to train. They should invest. Yes, they should invest in themselves. Because nobody's going to take it away from you once you know. Once you know it, once you understand it, it can never be taken away from you. And I think we should try to see, I mentioned the word service. And I say service because I think quite a lot of people who want to come into the profession or who came in quite recently into the profession have a different, what is the word now? A different purpose, okay? It's almost as if they're using broadcasting as a stepping stone to greater things. But I don't think that is quite fair on the profession. The fact that you want to pass through does not mean that you should pass through and reduce its value. Whatever it is that you're doing, however long you're doing it for, you should always add value.
So do you agree that the profession has actually become an all-comers affair? everyone is a journalist, everyone's a broadcaster, everyone's an on-air personality.
Well, I mean, with our devices now, you know, everybody, yes, you have citizen journalism, okay? But that doesn't mean that everybody's a broadcaster. There's a difference. There is a process that you just have to go through if you're really going to do this job professionally. And citizen journalists have not been through that process.
So what does it take? What is the process of being a professional journalist?
Well, journalist, broadcast journalist, I mean, in the first instance, you really have to understand, you know, the tenets. You have to understand that you are the messenger, okay? And you are the purveyor of the message. So the message, in my opinion, is much more important than the messenger. Certainly, if the messenger is dressed in an odd way, speaks in a funny way, and generally looks odd, then it's going to detract from the message. But still, having said that, assuming that all those things are in place, then really what is most important is the message.
Now, from the things that you've talked about since we started this conversation, it looks to me that there was quality, there was quality content at that time. You had very good persons who were doing these jobs. At what point did we lose it? That it became this watery with what we see today?
I'm not sure that I can actually say this is the year or this is the time, but I think what has happened is that broadcasters have fallen into what I call the app trap. Now, app is an acronym, actually. A is for attitude. P is for purpose. And the second P is for performance. I have said something about the attitude, really, you know. When we, and I'm not talking as if I began broadcasting. I met others, you know, on the job. It was never regarded as a job. It was regarded as a calling, you know. Even when it was our days off, we were still at the station because our friends were those that we worked with, okay? As I said before, we regarded it also as a service. Things changed somewhere along the line. When it came to purpose, we wanted to give a good account of ourselves. We wanted to make sure that the information and the material were correct, were right. So we also, I think, had a slightly different purpose. And then when it came to performance, we were never given the opportunity to give a slipshod performance. I mean, if you did, you were out. It was as simple as that. So you just had to prepare. You had to go through that preparatory process before going on air. There was a script. As a matter of fact, in those days, I think it is fair to say that producers were more important than presenters, because the producer sat down and came out with this content. He put or she put the script together, and then you as a presenter went through it and, you know, added your bit to also bring it to life. Now, I have seen situations where presenters were telling producers, this is the way we're going to do this program. And that just doesn't sit well with me at all. And I have been a producer and I have been a presenter. And I know that one really can't work well without the other. It's a partnership. As a matter of fact, it's a partnership with everybody. Your producer could write a beautiful script. You could have a presenter that could present it very well. But if they don't have a good relationship with their technical crew, for instance, your program could really end up looking so bad. And all the work, all the effort would simply be a waste of time.
So broadcasting is described as a chain. From what you've talked about now, you have the sequence broken in some places.
Yes.
Everyone is working in isolation. How can people come together to see that what it is they put out, everyone sits back, watches or listens to it, and they're happy with what it is they come up with?
It is it's a joint effort. It's a joint effort, and I think there has to be an understanding by each member of the team that it is not possible for this program to be excellent if we are not all bringing forward our A game. There is nobody that is more important, really, than the next person. The fact that I, as a presenter, appear on the screen does not mean that I am going to take the whole credit. Okay? Because if a script was written by someone, and as I said, you had a cameraman, you have the audio person, or camera woman, as the case may be, all these different elements come together. And if one goes wrong, then everything else goes wrong. If the sound is bad, your script could be fantastic, your presenter could be, A1, your camera work could be perfect. No sound, what's the output? It's a waste of time. So every element, everybody that brings an element forward needs to be respected, needs to be appreciated. That is the way everybody will actually give of their best, and then we can really start talking about an award-winning program.
You just talked about scripting now.
Yes.
And, the importance can never be overemphasized. What exactly would you say, in your own opinion, what is the essence of scripting for both the presenter and the producer?
Well, I would say the first thing about scripting is that it gives your program structure. Every program, it has a beginning and a middle and an end, okay? And the script actually helps you to determine what is important and what is not. Because you could have a program that's talking about, okay, we're talking about broadcasting. Now, there are certain aspects of broadcasting that are more important than others. There are certain, depending on the angle that you want to look at broadcasting from, okay? So when you write your script, you go through it, you're able to say, oh, it looks as if I'm spending too much time on this aspect. Let's reduce this a little bit and bump this other part up so that, we're looking at things equally. It's just like writing a speech. You need to go through it and be sure that the main elements that you are actually trying to get across, the main objective of the program is actually achieved. Without a script, you could find a presenter who could be very, very good, but then, sometimes when you get involved in a topic, you lose track of time, okay? So your script is like the Bible of that program. It keeps you, it's a guide, it keeps you on track. It keeps you within the time frame. Because usually you're also given an idea of how many minutes you're going to spend on this particular aspect of the script or of the program. So it's important.
Okay, of course, some messages are coming in because we're streaming live. Betty Delia, she's watching all the way from.
Hi, Betty.
Yes, and she says, I think the aspect of postmortem must be taken more seriously. Especially today, that will improve the standard. She also says that once again, you have raised the true role of the producer. The producer is the boss of the show. What do people need to understand? That the job of a producer is sometimes more important than the voice or the face that tries to put the message across. Well,
there is an expression that I've often heard, which I think I agree with, is content is king. Now, if the producer is the person who is putting together the content, then maybe the producer is the kingmaker as well as the provider, of the content. So the producer actually conceptualizes that program. Now, we have quite a lot of producer presenters now, which is fine, okay? As long as once you have completed your job or your responsibilities as a producer, when it is time for you to become the presenter, you have to release the production aspect to somebody else. You have to give that authority to somebody else to guide you through your presentation.
Okay.
Do you understand? So, but then apart from that, to come back to her question, it is the responsibility of the producer to ensure that he is in charge of the content. He's in charge of the flow of the program. Well, in those days, we had producer directors. We don't have too much of that now. Well, I'm not sure because truly I have not been to too many stations, but the few that I've been into, when I've been into their master control rooms, you have a director on duty who takes over from the producer. Okay, so when the producer has finished doing his job, he hands his script over to the director, who then guides the presenter through. But in the background is the producer, because sometimes a few things need to change. The director may not have complete understanding of what that program is about. The producer is able to give the director a few tips.
All right, Ahoynyako Okonkwo says, he's asking the question, do broadcasters retire? Why is it after some time they are no longer broadcasting?
Well, I don't think broadcasters retire. I think what happens, some broadcasters simply move into different, they move into different areas. But that doesn't mean that if you knock on their doors and ask them, would you please come and present this program, that they would not be able to. They would. They will. Some of us float in and float out. If I out, like, okay, now I have not anchored a news bulletin for a few, but I have a couple of ideas for other types of programs. Possibility that I could present one of them. I may have retired, or we may retire from what active broadcasting. But as I said, that doesn't mean that we would not consider other things.
If you're called upon to do that.
If we're called upon, or if we initiate, because, a lot of people are independent producers now.
All right, Eitayo in Canada, he says, a lot of people are framing rape and workplace sexual harassment as a modern phenomenon. In your experience as a seasoned broadcaster, Do you agree that it's a recent phenomenon? How did you deal with it, or have you ever experienced it? And what would you say is the pragmatic approach to making it stop in our media houses?
Well, that's quite a question. I think first of all we should establish that sexual harassment is not the exclusive prerogative for media houses or in media houses. It is not, sexual harassment is something that goes beyond media houses. It is simply because goldfish have no hiding place. That is why it appears as if it is something that is more commonly experienced within the media. Having said that, I think that when we have enough women in management positions in media houses across the board, it's going to be much easier to contain things like sexual harassment. Okay. I believe that a woman, I would like to think, in a management position, compassionate, when a fellow woman, probably younger, probably upcoming, comes up to her and says, "This is my experience." I'm aware that in some stations, meetings are actually held amongst, the women who work in those media houses, and they discuss things like sexual harassment. I must confess that I don't think that I have heard of any situation where a media woman in a radio station or a TV station or even the press, I don't think I have heard of a rape case within the walls of a media house. I don't think so. But I would certainly be lying if I said I had not heard of cases of sexual harassment. I think that we have reached a point where our work, our job, our output, I think it speaks. It speaks for us. And I also think that if you are working for an organization where your contribution is valued, I think if serious complaints are made, I don't think they will be ignored. I'm also aware that sometimes when things like this have come up, in stations, panels have been constituted, they've been set up, the truth or otherwise of such allegations. So it is something that, unfortunately, we live with, whether in a media house or out of it. It is something that I think is abysmal and abominable, and I think it is something that needs serious attention. I think it is something that requires serious sanctions, and people really need to be made to be examples. It needs to be seriously handled so that hopefully it becomes a deterrent.
Let me break it down for you. Would you be surprised to hear that some young female presenters are made to go through very abominable things just because they want to go on air? You find that some supervisors make them jump in and out of their beds just because they want to go on air. How do you describe the fact that people need to get their content right? not think about wanting to get on air by giving their bodies out to people?
I really don't see that. I don't see the need for such desperation. I don't see any reason why a young woman who wants to be on air has to go through that. For goodness sake, how many radio stations do we have? How many TV stations do we have? If this kind of thing is what you are expected to do in station A, then what are you doing there? What are you doing there? You get up and you go. You go someplace else. And as a matter of fact, if it keeps on happening, then you keep on moving. Because I don't see any reason why anybody should get away with something like that. And I don't see any reason why anybody should be desperate enough to be on air to go through that kind of situation. I don't think that there's any reason for it. And I don't think there's any excuse either.
For that?
No.
All right. Olushola Agbalu says, my greetings to her. My question is, we have someone like Christian Omanpo of CNN. She's still active on CNN. And she's old. She's in her late 60s. Why are you not handling programs now? Is it because you feel you're old, or are you not given the opportunity to do that?
No, actually, I don't think age has anything to do with broadcasting. I think sometimes for various reasons, you may just have to take a break. In my case, it was a personal thing, actually, and I had to take a break. But as I said not too long ago, I'm coming up with a couple of ideas, and I think, well, let's wait and see.
Watch and see. Mr. Femi Showolu sends his regards.
Oh.
And Betsy Dibia continues. She says, do we also agree that there are female culprits in the harassment issue too? Following up on Ife's question, there are those who offer to do so to get ahead in the industry.
I suppose there might be. I don't know who they are, really. I haven't met them. And I've not heard specific cases. But I guess, well, human beings are human beings. And I will not say that all women are harassed in this kind of situation. There is every possibility that a woman may also decide to be, if there's such a word, the harasser. Okay? It's very possible.
Right, Nancy Fowle from Cameroon says the common phenomenon is every presenter scripts his or her content, and then the program director flips through, then shooting begins. Given most presenters are not good in the scripts, the TV programs become boring. Nancy goes on to say, if someone wants to be an amazing presenter or broadcaster, what would you advise the person to study in school at the university level? Are broadcasters born? Are they made? Or you go to study to become a very good broadcaster?
Wow. Now, I think broadcasters are both born and made. I think that you could be born with a gift, okay? But the gift is not enough. You also need to go through training and you need to go through the process and learn the techniques so that you can sharpen that gift and build your skills. So I think it's a combination. Can you be born without the gift and become a very good broadcaster in as much as you're ready to do the work, in as much as you're ready to apply yourself, and learn the techniques, yes, you can. Now, studying, I think these days the profession is all about convergence, okay? So it's just like, you know, in the film industry, there was a time when you were either a cameraman or you were a sound man or you were an editor, etc., etc. But now you find that because of the economic situation everywhere in the world, people would rather employ those who have more than one skill. So, well, generally here, those going into journalism have probably studied mass communication. But then, I think it was towards the end of last year that the Nigerian University Commission came out with a new approach to mass communication studies. They unbundled it. So if you want to be a broadcaster, then you will study, you will go in for broadcast studies. If you want to be a PR practitioner, that's what you're going to study. If you want to go into advertising, that's what you're going to study. So I suppose based on that, I would say if you want to be a broadcaster, then you will go in for broadcast studies. I'm not sure exactly what each of these areas, how each of these areas will be defined, because can you be a broadcaster without being a journalist? Can you be a presenter without being, so I don't know. Yes, I don't know what the curriculum is going to look like. But I would say that at least if you're here, then, and I don't know, I'm not sure whether it's going to take effect from the new semester, the new session rather. I don't know how soon it will take effect, but let's assume that September, October, we'll be looking at a new session. Perhaps that is when the unbundling will begin. And so broadcast studies would be it.
All right, let's fast forward. Looking at Bimbo Oloyede, the broadcaster, award-winning journalist, public speaking and communications coach, master of ceremony, social activist and author. Which one of these actually, commands all of
at this very moment in time?
Yes.
The aspect that commands most of my attention is writing.
Okay. So what are you writing? I know about Strictly Speaking.
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Well, I'm writing. I don't really want to say what I'm writing,
okay,
so yes, it's still in the cooler. But I'm writing something to add to what I've already written.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's writing.
Yeah.
But you still do some master MC duties.
Oh, I haven't done that. I haven't done that for some time.
What does it take to be a very good MC? Because these days you see everyone attaching that to their names, their MCs. Then you go for these events and you hear things and you're wondering what's going on. So do you need to get trained to be a good master of ceremonies?
You may not need training per se.
Professional training per se.
Yes, but I think you need to have a certain orientation. Too many times, people who master the ceremony think the ceremony is about them. But it's not. The job of the master of ceremony is to ensure that the ceremony moves, okay? That it flows, that it follows a sequence, and that it is an enjoyable experience for the people who have come to attend that particular program. It is not about is not about selling it's not about selling yourself. Let me put it that way. Okay? So people who undertake to be masters of ceremony need to be able to fully understand the flavor of that particular event, so that they mentally key into that event. So the kind of language they use, the way they speak, the way they relate to those who have functions, the people they will introduce. Okay, there's a system, and it's not one size fits all. That's why I say masters of ceremony need to key into the kind of event so that they blend into the event itself. They're not supposed to stick out. They're not supposed to stand out. They're supposed to blend into the event and ensure that it moves seamlessly.
But these days you have people who organize events and they get you on their program as MC. But you're also required to perform the duties of a comedian. What is the connection?
Well, I think it is, if there is a connection, I think it's an unfortunate connection. Because the truth is that the skill of a comedian is completely different to the skill of a master of ceremony. Now, there are some types of events where both skills are useful, and both skills actually, liven up the entire event. But there are other types of events where you need a serious approach and jokes just don't fit in. So I have always said to anybody, anyway, that has ever hired me, one thing I don't do is jokes. So if you want a comedic interlude, please make sure you bring in a comedian. If you stand and holler at me from the back of the hall, we've got 10 minutes, tell us a joke, I will also just stand and look at you. I have no joke to tell you.
Oh my God. All right. I followed in your footsteps. I came up with a book. How did we get here?
Yes.
How did
we get here? 25 mistakes that radio presenters must avoid. Wow. Let's see.
The glossary. Content is on page 6.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I am very famous. I am a brand. I know everything. The station is nothing without me. Wow. That's a big delusion, isn't it? The station was there before you got there, and it will continue when you've gone. It's not a mistake. It's my style. Well, actually, do you know that you can stylishly make a mistake? You can make a mistake, and if you're clever enough, you can turn it into something that is not a mistake. But if you assume that when you make a mistake, you can pass it off as being your style, no, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Oh, I can't control my breath. Now, that's an interesting one. This is one of the techniques that I refer to when I talk about training. Because people read, they read out loud, they don't pause in the right places, they don't breathe in the right places, and as a result, what you get is something that is absolutely disjointed. What is supposed to come out as a simple sentence or a simple paragraph is chopped into pieces. So at the end of the day, there is no flow, there is no sequence, it is not smoothly read, and the result is that we don't understand what you're saying. So breathing, controlling breath is very, very important. Very important. Can we meet you? It's a horrible question. A horrible question. Okay, we've spoken about a script. Who needs a script? Everybody needs a script. Everybody. Oh, we are better than reporters. Ify, what exactly do you mean by this? We are better than reporters. Who is better than the reporter?
The presenter sometimes thinks they're better than the reporter.
You might as well say that the reporter should say that he or she is better than the cameraman. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. If you didn't have a reporter to go out and bring in a report, what would you introduce? So we're not better than reporters. We are actually reporters. We are also reporting.
So as we wind down with this interview, what would you say is the place of reading for presenters or on-air personalities, as they call themselves now? How would you describe the reading culture?
You mean
amongst them?
Okay, you mean just picking up novels or
instructional manuals to read. If you can't make out the time or money to attend a training, do you look for books that can help you as a broadcaster? Do you think they read that much?
Well, I think you can do a couple of things. Reading is certainly helpful because in any case, there is no knowledge that is wasted or lost. But I usually advise people to watch some of the international stations. I think we can learn by watching other people, by listening to other people, yes. I think we can also learn how to criticize each other constructively. I could have a program on, and I could give you a call. Ify, please watch my program, make notes. At the end of it, let's discuss. Now, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. There are certain things that I could have said, or certain things that I could have done, or maybe some questions, perhaps if it was an interview, perhaps some questions I could have asked, and I didn't. How would I know if I don't ask for somebody else's opinion? If I don't ask for information, if I don't ask for assistance? So I think that, those of us in this profession, and it doesn't really matter. I can call on somebody who is years younger than me. It makes no difference. It is an opinion, and a professional opinion. I can listen to BBC, maybe. I can listen to the pattern of the language, okay? I can listen to the sounds of English, because in our environment, it's so easy to pronounce words wrongly. There are certain words that you hear them said so often that you begin to believe that that is actually the right way to pronounce the word.
Some of those words.
Okay. There's one word that I often hear on radio and TV, and it's referring to petrol. That word is litre, liter, okay? That's the measurement, a liter of petrol. But I often hear people say a liter of petrol. Now, a liter it refers to a large number of, maybe not large, of animals, a litter of puppies, okay? But you hear people say a liter of petrol.
Ask and axe.
Yes, that happens too, ask and axe. You also hear, there's another word that is, it escapes my mind. Okay, yes, I've remembered. It's to do with protest. Now, you hear people talk about a protest, but I'm trying not to mix them up myself now. You have protesters, okay, but they are described quite often as protesters. They are not, okay? It is a protest, it's not a protest. Are you with me?
Yes.
To protest, that is the verb, protest, okay? But then
A group of women staging a protest.
a group of women, yes, they stage a protest, not a protest. And they are protesters, not protesters. I don't know. It's yes, the stress is always in the wrong place.
So
and as I'm thinking about it now, I'm getting confused.
So when you hear things like English is not our mother tongue, what comes to mind?
I think it's a ridiculous statement, actually. We know that it's not our mother tongue. So you don't need to tell us that.
But if you want to be a
But
broadcaster,
nobody asked you, nobody forced you to be a broadcaster. You elected to be.
so you must do it right.
So you need to do it properly. That's it. That's your responsibility. You know, young children, young people are listening. They're supposed to learn. So why would you teach them the wrong thing?
So when talking about the dial on a station, is it dot or point? Because it's been very controversial as it is. Dot or point, if you're talking about the dial of a radio station.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. 43.5, okay? 43 dots. No, I think now that I consider it, maybe dot should apply to an email or a website address, okay? And perhaps point should apply to a station. Honestly, I don't really know I'm just thinking about it really for the first time.
So I'm hoping we can learn this in your next training. Because there's also the issue of calling out your number. Is it 080 or 080?
Yes, honestly, I've had this discussion so many times.
So how do you address it?
I don't. Then again, 080 080. I'm not. There are people who swear by one or the other. I don't think I'm going to join that bandwagon.
Okay.
I think that I don't think either one is actually right or wrong. Though I know I have colleagues that would disagree with me. 080.
So it's a long time thing. People keep talking about.
Yes, we've been talking about this for ages, ever since 080 or 080 or 090 came into being. You see, even if we said it should be this way today, because language is so dynamic,
It changes.
it does change. And the funny thing is, it could change and become, another 5 years, it could come back
To what it was.
to what it was. There's this word, I think it's sure, S-U-R-E. There was a time when, well, the book that we usually use, and hold up is Daniel Jones. There was a time when Daniel Jones said sure was pronounced sure, okay? Then another edition came out and it changed, and sure became the first option and sure became the second option. Then another edition came out, and this time they went back to sure being the first option and sure being the second option. So there we go.
Yes, and so many other words
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
All right, how do you close?
How do I close?
Yes, is there something you want? Is there something we don't know that you'd like to tell us?
About what?
Of course, you've already said you don't want to talk about the book. We'll wait
yes.
and see when the book comes out.
Yes,
Are we
yes.
ever going to see you read the news again? Somewhere, anywhere?
I am never going to say never.
Okay, and you're not shutting the door.
I'm not shutting the door completely. I did shut it, actually. There was at a point I decided in my mind that I'm done with that, okay? But quite a lot of people have spoken to me and said, well, can't you just do it sometimes, or,
Wow.
So, I can't rule it out completely. I may not think in terms of anchoring an entire bulletin, but I might do a little bit of it, I might even come up with something that is somehow news-based, but is not exactly a news bulletin. Yeah. Who knows? As long as we're alive, we're creating, and we're thinking about different things and coming up with different ideas and different formats. So, well, let's wait and see. But I know that at some point or other, I'll be back.
All right, thank you. And that's how we'll close. Thank you
Okay.
for your time.
Thank you very much,
We're
Ife.
grateful.
Yeah, you're welcome.